everybody, and welcome to the Stress Workshop. I'm Lexi, and I'll be conducting this workshop. And we're just going to focus on different tactics and ways to de-stress, to help your body cope with stress, and kind of just have these little tools useful for you anytime and any place. I'm going to show you de-stressing activities with deep breathing. We're going to do a little bit of yoga, and we're going to do some gratitude journaling. So the materials that you're going to need for this are a pen and paper or a journal and a yoga mat. If you have any special requirements, or if you had any prior injuries, or you feel like you can't do any part of this workshop, feel free to communicate with me and I will show you an alternative way of doing the poses for yoga. Or if it's a writing problem, we can just use visualization. So don't be shy. Please make sure to communicate with me if you have any questions or concerns. This workshop is ideally suited for college students. Ideally it would be in a classroom setting. However, due to the recent global pandemic, I'm going to be conducting it virtually, and I'm really happy to be connected with you guys in this way. So let's get started. I'm just going to start this workshop by asking you to take a moment and reflect on a time where you felt really stressed out, and just think about how your body felt at the moment. Any symptoms or physical feelings that you experienced, because everybody's body is different. Everybody responds to stress differently, and sometimes it's not even that easy to recognize that you're stressed because you're so caught up in your day-to-day life and you're so caught up in the tasks that you have to do that you don't really take the time out to listen to your body. Or you do experience symptoms, but you don't think it's because you're stressed, or you think it's because of some other reason, and you just kind of push it to the side and ignore it. Some common physical side effects or symptoms of stress can be headache, muscle tension or pain, chest pain, fatigue, upset stomach, sleeping problems, or even changes in your sex drive. And that's just physical. There are emotional symptoms as well, and mood changes. So you can feel anxious, you can have some restlessness, lack of motivation, you can feel overwhelmed, you can be irritated or angry, or you can be sad or depressed. And I just want you to take a moment to think about you as an individual. What do you feel when you feel stressed? And how do you recognize it? How do you know that you're stressed out? So for me personally, I get stressed out when it's final time and I carry a lot of tension in my shoulders and my back, right? A lot of us do, but a lot of us don't. A lot of us experience it in other ways. Oftentimes, college students, they get caught up in the academic pressure. There's a lot of expectations on us and a lot of deadlines, and it's a lot to handle. During especially stressful times, such as finals or midterms, students typically don't take the time out for self-care or relaxing activities. And studies have actually been shown that when a student is stressed and preoccupied, it takes away their ability to focus and retain information. So you may think that you don't have time to de-stress, but you're actually costing yourself a lot more time in the long run because you're not able to retain that information. So you have to keep repeating it just to get it, when in reality you could have taken a 10-minute break to do a de-stressing activity, come back to whatever it is that the task is at hand, and tackled it a little bit more effectively. And I just want you to keep in mind that all of the tactics and the little advice that I give you is just that. It's advice. These things have been proven to help with stress. However, everyone has their own their own preferences. Some people don't like to do yoga or meditation to de-stress. Some people like to go on a walk or play with their pets or read a book or listen to music. Just keep in mind that this is your body, and as long as you listen to what your body wants and what your body needs, then that's what's right for you, okay? But today we're going to learn a little bit about our body's response to stress and how we can help our body in reducing stress, and so that we can perform our best, okay? I'm going to go right into it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about deep breathing. So deep breathing practices are like the number one thing that people think of or recommend when it comes to de-stressing. And there's a very good reason for that. There's actually a physiological reason. Our bodies are set up in such a way that it kind of just makes sense to take a deep breath in and out during stressful times. Our nervous system actually has two main jobs. One is to take in information, and the other one is to decide on how to respond to that information. So we're going to focus today on our response, because 99% of the time we don't really have control of our external factors. We don't know, we can't control what's going on around us, but we can control how we react to it. So focusing on the response system, it's actually divided into two more parts. There's the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So the somatic deals with voluntary movements. This is, the movements that you make voluntarily. So if you're in a yoga class and your yoga instructor tells you to go in the chair position and sit your hips low, you have your somatic response, your voluntary response tells you how low you should sit, because that's what feels right to your body. The autonomic nervous system deals with involuntary movements, and this is like the movement of your intestines when you digest food, or the way your pupils expand or contract when they see light, the flow of hormones into your bloodstream. These are all movements that are going on within our bodies that we don't really have a say-so in, I guess. It's totally involuntary. And that system, the involuntary system, actually splits into two more topics, which is going to be our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for upregulating your bodily functions, and this is what we refer to as the flight or fight response. There's also the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for down regulating, and this is like the rest and digest part of our system, or the calm part. We're going to focus on the sympathetic nervous system, which is the flight or fight response. Now, this flight or fight response, so you get stressed out, and then your body has this sympathetic nervous system response, and what it does is it sends hormones, stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, into your bloodstream, and it increases the oxygen to your blood, and it increases your reflex ability. And this is all great. These are all great things if you're, say, like being chased by a bear, right? Because that sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and you want to be able to run away as fast as you can to save your life. And we don't ever want the system to go away completely, because it has been what's made us possible today. It's essential in survival, right? But what if you're stressed and you're sitting in traffic? Your body doesn't know the difference between a life-threatening situation and a non-life-threatening situation. All it knows is that you're stressed. So it's going to kick in those hormones, and it's going to kick in those responses, and it's going to do what it normally would do if you were under a lot of stress. Now, the problem with this is that if these hormones are regularly present in your blood, it can cause some difficult physical health challenges like digestive problems, heart disease. It can cause sleep difficulties, memory challenges, and in addition, it can cause, mental or emotional stress like anxiety and depression. Here's the good news though. You have a tool at your disposal to switch out of this flight or fight response. Now, we don't want to ever make it go away completely, but if you're in a stressful situation and your life is not at risk, you can switch out of this response and kind of trick your sympathetic nervous system by your breath. How? How does this work? Well, there's this muscle called your diaphragm. Now, your diaphragm sits almost right below your ribs. If you take a deep breath with your diaphragm, it contracts, it pulls downward, it creates more space for the air by getting out of the way of your lungs and also pressing your organs and some muscles that are below it forward, which is why your belly presses out when you take a deep breath in. I'm going to show you a picture of this muscle and where it lies. All right, so that is what your diaphragm looks like. This is your rib cage, and this is where the diaphragm sits. So this muscle is actually really crazy cool because it is attached to your heart by a tendon. And what that means is that if you slow the rate at which you breathe, it immediately impacts your heart rate. So if you choose to take a slower breath on purpose, you choose to slow your heart rate down. And by slowing your heart rate down, it signals your brain that, hey, we're good here. There's not a bear chasing after me. My life isn't in immediate danger. You can chill out, right? So this is a really helpful and useful piece of knowledge, because if you ever feel overwhelmed and you take a deep breath, you can slow down your heart rate, trick your sympathetic nervous system, and calm down your body. So just keep this in mind moving forward with your everyday lives, pretty much. Know that no matter how stressed out you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you can always just take a deep breath. So I'm going to invite you guys to sit in a seated position, whatever is most comfortable to you, and hands on your knees. Let's take a deep breath together and exhale naturally, okay? Good. Now I'm going to invite you to take this hand and put it right on your diaphragm. Go ahead and take a deeper breath in. Feel your diaphragm contract, allowing air to enter your lungs, and exhale. One more time. Inhale. Exhale. Good job, guys. Let's go into a little bit of yoga poses. Now, these are really, really easy poses, but if you have any difficulties or injuries, please let me know and we can figure out a different method for you, okay? So I'm gonna ask you guys to go into tabletop position. This is where both of your knees are grounded on the floor and your hands are on the floor as well. All right, we're gonna move into cat-cow. So if you guys know what it is, I invite you to just go ahead and go for it, but I'll talk you through it. As you inhale, you're gonna start with a flat back. Make sure your arms are straight. Your weight is neutral between your knees and your arms. It's kind of in the center. As you inhale, you're going to lift your head. You're gonna expand your chest and you're gonna arch your back and look up. As you exhale, you're going to round your back, look down, press into the floor, and concentrate on getting your back up as far as you can. Okay. All right. Now, inhale, look up. Exhale, cat. Arch your back, press into the ground. Inhale, arch your back, look up, open your chest. Exhale, arch your back, press into the floor. As you're going through these moments, I invite you to deepen your breath, to lengthen your breath, and as you are doing so, lengthen your poses. Flow with your breath into the poses. Really concentrate on the flow. Really concentrate on making sure that your breath matches your poses. And one more deep breath in. Great. Go ahead and release that position. Sit back on your tailbone, and I'm gonna need you guys to go ahead and flatten down all the way on the ground. Make sure everything is touching the ground, and then you're going to flatten your forearms onto the ground as well for what we call Sphinx pose. This is a great exercise to open up your chest a little bit, kind of get your back muscles awake. Let's take a couple deep breaths here. Inhale. And exhale. As I exhale, I can feel my back abdominal muscles working. And as I inhale, I feel it more in my chest. One more deep breath here. And exhale. Great, guys. Great job. Go ahead and get out of that position, and let's come back to a seated position or whatever is most comfortable with you. So the cat-cow pose that we just did, like I said, can be done pretty much anywhere. Is very relatively simple to do. It's a gentle flow between two poses. It warms up the body and brings flexibility to the spine. It stretches the back torso and neck, and it softly stimulates and strengthens the abdominal organs. It also opens up the chest. It encourages the breath to become slow and deep. Slow, deep breath, less stress. The spinal movement of the two poses stimulates the kidneys and adrenal glands. Coordinating this movement with your breath relieves stress and actually calms the mind. So you already did such a great job at de-stressing today. The next thing I'm going to invite us to do is gratitude journaling. So this is something that's really, really interesting. You know how we were talking about external factors earlier? Well, they've actually done a study, and 10%, only 10% of your long-term happiness is based on external factors. And 90% of your long-term happiness is based on how your mind processes all of these events. So this exercise is meant to rewire your brain to look at things in a more positive light and just be a little bit more grateful. Doing this can significantly de-stress your mind and kind of declutter your mind. But the trick is to be consistent. When you reflect on a positive moment that happened to you within the last 24 hours, your brain doesn't actually know the difference between going through the experience, actually being there physically, and just remembering it. So when you reflect on a positive moment that happened in the past 24 hours, you actually trick your brain into thinking that you're going through it again. And there was somebody named Sean Archer, He actually did a 2-minute happiness exercise for 21 days in a row. And he showed that you can completely rewire everyone's brain in terms of how they reflect and process the external world. So it's not about what's happening to you. It's not about your external factors. It's about how you process it. That's what kind of determines your happiness. And if you can rewire your brain into appreciating all of the good things, then you can find happiness, simple and plain. If this exercise is repeated, you can teach your brain to look for more positive and embrace the positive things around you, which is great. So I'm going to ask you guys to get your pen and your paper or your journal. If you have any problems with writing, or if you don't want to write, or if you're somewhere where you can't have access to this, that's totally fine. I invite you to just do a simple visualization, because visualizing it and going through this exercise can be just as effective. So I want to give you a minute to think of a positive experience that happened to you within the last 24 hours. This is a moment where you felt the most bliss. Even if you didn't have a good day the past 24 hours, just think about that one moment when you were the happiest. There has to be one of those, right? So think of a specific positive moment that happened to you in the last 24 hours. Make sure to use a very specific moment and be as detailed as you can. And reflecting on this moment, I'm going to invite you to think about the 5 senses and what you were experiencing during this time. What could you hear that was going on around you? Let's start with that. So go ahead and take a moment. You just took some deep breaths. You got some good oxygen flow going through your brain. You're feeling good, right? Now think about the last 24 hours that you've been through. Think about one particular positive experience or positive moment. What could you hear that was going on around you? Were you outside? Was there the sound of cars? Were you inside? Was music playing? Go ahead and think about that exact moment and think about nothing but what you heard in that moment. And go ahead and write it down. Be as detailed as you can. Once you've documented or written down what you heard, let's move on to smell. Were you able to smell anything? Was there a specific fragrance? Was there a candle burning? Were you outside? Could you smell somebody barbecuing? Just go ahead and think about what you were smelling in that moment and write it down. If it's nothing, that's totally fine. You can write, I didn't smell anything. That can be positive sometimes too, right? So I'm going to write down what I was smelling in my positive moment. Okay, moving on. Were you tasting something? Were you eating? Were you sipping on a cup of coffee or tea? Write down any specific tastes that were going on during this positive moment. If you weren't tasting anything, was your mouth dry? Was your lips dry? Did you feel totally normal? How was your mouth in that moment? Moving on to physical touch. What were you feeling? Were you next to somebody? Were you holding their hand? Was your hand on your leg? Were you sitting? Were you leaning? Could you feel anything against you? What feelings of touch were you having in that moment of time? If you were walking, what was the feeling like of the ground on your feet, or what kind of shoes did you feel like were you wearing? Were your hands moving past you, touching other parts of your body? Any physical touch that you can remember, go ahead and document that. okay? And last but not least, what did you see? What were you wearing? What environment were you in? Were you in a room or outside? Who else was there? What were they wearing? Were there things on the wall? Try to think about everything you saw in that moment and make sure to document it. Okay, now put down your pen and your paper and let's visualize that specific moment that you just wrote about together. Let's sit down again and take one more deep breath in. Ready? Inhale. And exhale fully. Put yourself back in that space. Recall the 5 senses. What did you hear? What did you smell? What did you taste? What did you touch? And what did you see? Just take a minute here to relive that moment and put yourself in that space again. All right, guys. Inhale one last time. And blink your eyes open. I hope you enjoyed this session. I know that I did, and just know that you can modify these. You can make them shorter. You can just do breathing exercises. You can just do gratitude journaling. You can just visualize a positive moment. Just take the time out every day to really focus on yourself and make sure that you're giving your body the tools that it needs to really de-stress. And if you have any questions, I'm going to be here for you after this workshop. And thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.